Hello there, how are you doing? Now in this video we're going to learn about static properties and methods. Okay, so far all the properties and methods were linked to this specific instance, right? So two different instances could have two different values for the same property. For example, we have customer. The customer is the first customer. We could create second customer. Let's call it second customer, and let's give it a name of Jen, and let's change this to Jen. Okay, so we still have the same class, right? This class has the ID, first name, last name, email. It's all same. However, every time we instantiate, based on the instantiation, we get different result, right? So we can say var_dump, and we can var_dump the second customer. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, so the second customer we created with Jen, with the surname of Dingle and the email of Jen. So, and we still have the previous one. Okay, so we can create, class remains the same, properties remains the same, but based on the instantiation we get different result. But what if we want certain methods or properties linked to the class itself rather than to the object, right? So anytime, even if you instantiate certain properties, you want to stay linked to the class itself. So PHP allows us to have multiple properties and methods linked to the class itself rather than to the object, because so far what we have, these properties are just related to the object instances. As soon as you instantiate, they change. What if we want to have something static, right? So we're going to cover that here. Static properties and methods. So let's go to customer class, and let's say we want to have some kind of the ID system. Let's say last ID. Okay. So let's create a variable on top, a property, and then we call it, we make it private static. Okay, so this is how we create a static property, a method. Okay, so you use static keyword. Okay, so let's say last ID, and let's set it to 0. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is, when we instantiate this new customer, the ID is supplied, right? So what if the ID is not supplied? So in that case, what we can do is we can refer to the last ID and increment it. Okay, so every time a new customer is added and the ID is somehow not supplied, then we, based on the last ID, we increment by 1. Okay, so that's how we maintain the ID system. Before the first name, this ID thing, let's comment this out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a simple logic here. If this ID, the one that we're getting from arguments, okay, if that is null, then what I would like to do is I would like to point to this ID, our property, and then set it to self. Now this is how you access the static properties, okay, using the self and double colon. Okay, it's very important. I'm trying to point to this property, but because it is static, I can't use this. Because it is static, I have to use self. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, so if ID is null, if null value is passed, then I take the ID, put value to this ID, and this value will be the last ID. Right now, last ID is currently sitting on the 0, so we increment. Okay, if it is null, we increment, and that becomes the ID of this one. Now also, else what happens is this ID equals ID. So if it is not null, then what do we do? In that case, if it is not null, if something is passed, then that's good. So we take that ID. That ID is whatever is passed down, that will be assigned to this ID. And then again, if, again we need another check here if this ID is greater than self last ID. So if it is greater than that, then what we do is self last ID, set that to the current ID. So for example, if instead of 1 2 3 4, for example, one customer comes and give the ID of 10. So in that case, we take the highest one. Okay, if ID is greater than the self last ID, so last ID would be, let's assume it was 1, but if somebody or user come supplying the ID of 10, so in that case, if that is greater than this last ID, then we set that last ID to that ID. Okay, so if 10 comes, then it will have the value of 10. Now the next time if somebody comes with a null, then this 10 becomes 11 and that will be assigned to that user. Okay, so it's a basic logic, you got it. The main point here is you use static using this static keyword, and you access static with this self double colon. Okay, so to see this in action, why don't we create another accessor? Okay, so let's create another accessor. Because it is private, we can't access straight away. What we can do is we can make another function. Now the method public static function. Okay, this is a static function. Okay, so this will return self last ID. I forgot to give it a name, get last ID. Okay, so public static function get last ID, and it will return the self, the static property last ID. Okay, awesome. Now we can try accessing it in init.php. Okay, so init.php, I want to access the get last ID, right? So there's a difference on getting the static property. You can use the regular way, for example, like this. Okay, so var dump, we can do it the regular way, such as first customer, and we want to get last ID, right? Now this is not going to work because it is a static method. We can't use the arrow, instead we use this double colon. Okay, let's save this one, let's give it a try. So press ID integer 0, so we got the ID of 0. Let's comment this out. Let's try on the first customer. Let's say we don't supply the ID. Let's see what happens. Null, give null, and then let's give it a try. In init.php, let's create some more customer. We have first customer, we have second customer. Let's say second customer had null. Okay, the first customer has the ID of 1, second of null, and let's create one more. Let's name it third, and then let's give it 5. Okay, ram. Okay, so we got 3 customer. So what you can do is first customer. Okay, so we instantiated. Now we can access the get last ID. This is the method we used, right? Public static get last ID. Yep, because it is static, we don't use arrow, we use double colon instead. Okay, so there is another way as well. So this way is reference it using existing instance, right? Now the next method is also there of accessing static property, and that is reference it using class name itself. Okay, so this way what you would do is, what you're trying to get the static property of belongs to this class customer, right? So you can directly refer to the class itself. So what you can do is customer, and you can use double colon and then get last ID. See, so this is another beauty of static properties. You don't need to instantiate as well. You can directly reference the class and invoke here, and you will see this sort of pattern everywhere in Laravel framework. All right, so now that you know how to work with static properties, let's have a look at it in the browser. Let's see what we get. Fresh. Let me comment this out. It's all this. Comment it out. Okay, so we instantiated the customers and we try and get the last ID. Awesome. So fresh. Okay, and we don't see anything. Okay, sorry, this one shouldn't be equal, this should be double equal, right? If it is equals to null, right, let's give it a try. Okay, so we see 5 8. So the last ID is set to 5. Why don't we comment this out as well? Why don't we comment this out? And let's see. Let's save it again. Let's see. And as you can see, 1. The last ID is 1, as well as the first customer's ID is 1. So give null. Okay. Let's leave null. Okay. Obviously, it increments. For example, let's say, let's try this one. Second customer. So the first one, let's say, let's give it 1, and then the second customer, let's give it null, and we should see 2, right? So let's see this one. So the first one is given the 1, so that's fine. Now the second one is not. It's not given anything, so it's given null. So that function should increment to based on the previous one. So it should have 2. Let's give it a try. Refresh, as you can see, it's 2. Okay, so that's how it works. The key here is you can create static properties and methods using this static keyword. Okay, and you access within the class using self : you can refer to the class itself without having to instantiate and all this stuff. You can even go directly. Okay, so this pattern you will see all the time in Laravel. For example, you can refer to the model and : you can use create method to create new instance and save to the database. Okay, so all that stuff, now that you know static properties, it will be easier when you work with frameworks like Laravel. All right, so this is it. I'll see you in the next video, and in the next video we're going to learn about namespaces. All right, see you in the next video. Thank you.